The iron shackles bit into Brielle Voss's wrists as she stood on the auction platform in Yuma, Arizona. The blistering June sun of 1876 beating down on her like the judgment of an angry god. And somewhere in the crowd of men gathered to bid on her labor contract, a cowboy with storm-gray eyes watched the auctioneer unfold a letter that would change everything. "Now, gentlemen, I've got a special one here," the auctioneer called out, his voice carrying across the dusty square. "Young woman, 19 years old, indentured for the next 7 years to pay off her late father's debts, come all the way from Pennsylvania. Got a letter here from her previous employer." He cleared his throat and began to read. "To whom it may concern, the bearer of this letter, Brielle Voss, is worthless as a worker, worthless as help, and worthless as a woman. She cannot cook without burning, cannot sew without bleeding fingers, and cannot follow the simplest instruction. I hereby release her contract and wish the buyer better luck than I have had." Laughter rippled through the crowd, cruel and sharp. Brielle felt her cheeks burn hotter than the Arizona heat. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, refusing to let them see her cry. The shackles were heavy, but not as heavy as the shame that pressed down on her shoulders. Her father had been a good man, a dreamer who invested everything in a silver mine that never produced. When he died 6 months ago, she discovered he owed more money than she could ever repay. The creditors sold her contract, and she had been passed from owner to owner, each one finding fault, each one eager to be rid of her. "Starting bid $50, the auctioneer announced. "Who'll take this worthless piece of work off my hands?" Silence fell over the square. Men shuffled their feet, looked away, whispered to their neighbors. $50 was nothing for 7 years of labor, but apparently even that was too much to risk on someone declared worthless. Brielle swallowed hard. If no one bid, she would be sent to the territorial prison to work off her debt in conditions that killed most people within 2 years. She had seen the prison wagon when it rolled through town, the hollow-eyed women behind the bars. $40. The auctioneer dropped the price. Still nothing. "30. Come now, gentlemen, she's young and healthy even if she is useless. $500. The voice cut through the square like a knife through silk, deep and certain. Every head turned toward the speaker. Brielle's gaze snapped to him, and for the first time since stepping onto the platform, her heart beat for something other than fear. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy, worn leather chaps over dusty denim, a dark shirt rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and a black hat tipped low over his face. But it was his eyes that caught her. Storm gray and steady, they looked at her not with the dismissive contempt she had grown used to, but with something else entirely. Something that made her breath catch. "Did you say 500, Quincy?" The auctioneer sputtered. "That's more than 10 times the asking price." "I know what I said, Howard." The cowboy, Quincy, stepped forward through the parting crowd. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step. "And I'll add another 100 if you throw in those shackles. I want to make sure they never touch her wrists again." The auctioneer's eyes gleamed with greed. "600 it is, sold to Quincy Garrett." Quincy climbed the platform steps with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. He was even more imposing up close, his presence filling the space around them. He handed a thick roll of bills to the auctioneer, then turned to Brielle. His eyes were kind, she realized with a shock. Actually kind. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her shackles. His voice was gentler than she expected, touched with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas origins. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He produced a key from the auctioneer and unlocked the iron cuffs. They fell away, and she gasped at the sudden lightness, rubbing her raw wrists. Before she could react, Quincy had pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and was gently wrapping it around her right wrist, the worse of the two. "There," he said softly. "That's better." The auctioneer held out the letter, that horrible letter that had just humiliated her in front of the entire town. "Don't forget this, Garrett. Might want to know what you're getting into." Quincy took the letter, his jaw tightening as he glanced at the words. Then, in one smooth motion, he pulled a match from his pocket, struck it against the platform rail, and held it to the corner of the paper. The flame caught quickly in the dry air, eating through the words worthless, worthless, worthless until they were nothing but ash drifting away on the desert wind. "I don't need anyone else's opinion," Quincy said, his eyes never leaving Brielle's face. "I can see treasure when I find it." Brielle's breath left her lungs in a rush. No one had ever called her treasure. No one had ever looked at her the way this stranger was looking at her now, like she mattered, like she was worth something. Tears pricked her eyes and she blinked them back furiously. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking on the words. "Come on," Quincy said, offering his arm like she was a lady, not an indentured servant he had just purchased. "Let's get you out of this sun. My ranch is about an hour's ride north. You must be thirsty." She took his arm because her legs were shaking and she needed the support, but also because something in her wanted to touch him, to confirm he was real and not some fever dream conjured by the heat and her desperation. His arm was solid under her hand, warm through the fabric of his shirt. He led her through the crowd, which parted silently now, the earlier mockery replaced with something like surprise. At the edge of the square stood the finest horse Brielle had ever seen, a massive bay stallion with a white star on his forehead. Next to him stood a gentler-looking mare already saddled. "This is Copper," Quincy said, patting the mare's neck. "She's steady and sweet-tempered. I borrowed her from my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, this morning. Thought you might need your own mount. You knew you were coming to buy me." Brielle asked, confused. "But how could you know?" Quincy's expression darkened slightly. "I didn't know you specifically, but I knew Howard was auctioning another indentured servant today, and I knew what that meant. I've seen too many people treated like cattle in this town. Figured if I could help one person, I should." He helped her mount, his hands respectful on her waist, giving her just enough lift to swing into the saddle. She had not ridden much in Pennsylvania, and never in a proper Western saddle, but she gripped the pommel and tried to look more confident than she felt. Quincy mounted his own horse with fluid ease and clicked his tongue. The horses started forward at an easy walk, heading north out of town. The sun was still merciless, but Quincy kept them to the shade where he could find it, following the winding path along the Colorado River's edge where cottonwoods offered brief respite. "I should explain how this works," Quincy said after they had been riding for several minutes. "You're contracted to me for 7 years. By law, I own your labor, but I want to be clear about something right from the start. I'm not interested in a slave. I'm interested in giving you a chance to build a life." Brielle studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way he sat his horse like he was born in the saddle. "What does that mean?" "It means you'll work on my ranch, same as my other hands. I've got 5 men working for me, good men who'll treat you with respect or answer to me. I've got a housekeeper, Alina, who comes in 3 days a week. She's been wanting help with the garden and the chickens, and I could use someone to help with the books and correspondence. I'm not much for writing." He glanced at her. "But you'll be paid. Paid." Brielle repeated, certain she had misheard. $40 a month, same as my other hands. It'll go into an account in your name. At the end of 7 years, you'll have enough saved to buy land, start a business, or do whatever you want. You'll have your freedom and the means to keep it." Brielle felt dizzy, and not from the heat, Why would you do that? You paid $600 for my contract. You could make me work for nothing." Quincy was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the horizon. "My mother was indentured," he said finally, "back in Texas after my father died. A man bought her contract when I was 10 years old. He was not kind. He worked her until her hands bled and her back bent. I was too young to stop it, too small to do anything but watch her suffer. She died when I was 14, worn down to nothing." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Brielle heard the pain beneath it. "I swore then that if I ever had the means, I'd do better. I'd be better." "I am sorry," Brielle said softly. "That must have been terrible." "It taught me what matters," Quincy replied. "Every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves a chance. You didn't deserve that letter. You didn't deserve those shackles. And you sure as hell don't deserve to be called worthless." They rode in silence for a while, following the river as it wound through the desert landscape. The terrain was so different from Pennsylvania, all red rock and sparse vegetation, but there was a stark beauty to it that Brielle found oddly comforting. Or maybe it was just that for the first time in months, she felt a tiny flicker of hope. "Can I ask you something?" Brielle ventured. "Anything? Why did you call me treasure? You don't even know me." Quincy turned to look at her fully, those storm-gray eyes intense. "I know you've been through hell and you're still standing. I know you kept your head up on that platform even when they were laughing at you. I know you've got strength most people only pretend to have. That's treasure, Miss Voss. Real, genuine treasure." Brielle's throat tightened. She had to look away, blinking hard against the tears that threatened to fall. No one had ever seen her that way. Her father had loved her, but he had been disappointed in her lack of domestic skills, her tendency to lose herself in books instead of learning to cook. Her mother had died when she was young, and there had been no one to teach her the things women were supposed to know. Every employer since her father's death had confirmed what she already feared, that she was a failure, a burden, worthless. But this stranger, this cowboy with kind eyes and a tragic past, looked at her and saw something different, saw something valuable. "I cannot cook," she said, needing him to understand. "I truly cannot. I once caught water on fire, though I still do not understand how. I am terrible with a needle. I faint at the sight of blood." Everything that letter said was true. Quincy's lips curved into a smile, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his whole face. "Can you read?" "Yes, very well. Write, better than I read. Do arithmetic. I helped my father with his accounts for years. Then you can do the things I need help with. Alina can teach you cooking if you want to learn, but if not, I've been feeding myself for years. I don't need a cook. I don't need a seamstress. I need someone with a sharp mind and a strong spirit. Seems to me you've got both." They crested a small rise and Quincy pointed ahead. "There. That's home." The ranch spread out below them, nestled in a valley where the river widened into a genuine water source. A sturdy two-story house stood at the center, built from adobe and wood with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Behind it stood a large barn, several outbuildings, and an extensive network of corrals filled with horses. Fields stretched to the east, green with crops that seemed impossible in this desert landscape, until Brielle realized they had built irrigation channels from the river. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's called the Broken Star Ranch," Quincy said. "My father started it when I was a boy before he died. After my mother passed, I worked as a ranch hand for 10 years, saved every penny and bought it back from the man who took it from us. That was 4 years ago. I've been building it back up ever since." They rode down into the valley, and as they approached the house, several men emerged from the barn. They were a diverse group. An older man with silver hair and a weathered face, 2 younger men who looked like brothers, a lean black man with intelligent eyes, and a broad-shouldered man with the features of the local Quechan tribe. "Boys, this is Miss Brielle Voss," Quincy announced as they dismounted. "She'll be working with us, helping with the accounts and such. I expect you to treat her with the same respect you'd show your own sisters." The older man stepped forward, pulling off his hat. "Sam Wright, madam. Pleased to meet you. Any friend of Quincy's is a friend of ours." The others introduced themselves in turn. The brothers were James and Thomas Cooper. The black man was Daniel Freeman, a former Buffalo soldier, and the Quechan man was called River, though Quincy explained his full name was much longer and he preferred the shortened version. "Alina should be here tomorrow," Quincy told her. "For tonight, I'll show you to your room and we'll figure out supper. You must be exhausted." Exhausted did not begin to cover it. Now that the adrenaline was fading, Brielle felt like she could barely stand. The heat, the fear, the sudden reversal of fortune, it all crashed over her at once. She swayed slightly, and Quincy's hand was immediately at her elbow, steadying her. "Easy," he murmured. "Let's get you inside." The house was blessedly cool, thick adobe walls keeping out the worst of the heat. Quincy led her up a wooden staircase to the second floor and opened a door to a room that made her breath catch. It was simple but clean, with a real bed covered in a colorful quilt, a dresser with a mirror, a washstand, and a window overlooking the valley. After months of sleeping on straw pallets and floor mats, it looked like paradise. "This is yours," Quincy said. "There's water in the pitcher and I'll bring up some clean clothes. They'll be too big, but Alina can help you with alterations tomorrow. Where will you sleep?" Brielle asked, then flushed at how forward the question sounded, but Quincy did not seem bothered. "My room's at the end of the hall. You don't need to worry. You're safe here, Miss Voss. I give you my word." And strangely, impossibly, she believed him. This man she had known for less than 2 hours. She believed him completely. He left her alone, and Brielle sank onto the bed, feeling the softness of the mattress beneath her, the coolness of the room around her. She looked down at her hands, at the raw marks on her wrists where the shackles had bitten, at the dirt under her fingernails and the trembling in her fingers. She was free. Not legally, not yet, but in every way that mattered. This man, this Quincy Garrett, had paid a fortune for her contract, and then immediately promised to pay her, to treat her like a person instead of property. He had burned that horrible letter, called her treasure, and looked at her like she was worth something. Brielle lay back on the bed and let the tears finally come, great shaking sobs of relief and fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. The next weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Alina arrived the next morning, a round Mexican woman in her 50s with a warm smile and no-nonsense attitude. She took one look at Brielle and immediately declared that the poor girl needed feeding up and proper clothes. "Too skinny," Alina announced, "and these clothes, they are rags. Come, we will fix this." Alina turned out to be a whirlwind of efficiency. She cooked enormous meals that Brielle was expected to help eat, taught her the basics of desert living, and somehow produced 3 dresses in Brielle's size within a week. When Brielle asked where they came from, Alina waved a hand dismissively. "I have daughters. They have outgrown these. Better you wear them than they sit in a trunk." The dresses were simple calico, but they fit properly and were in good condition. Brielle felt more human in them than she had in months. Quincy was true to his word about everything. He set her up in a small office off the main living area with ledgers, correspondence, and records going back 4 years. The books were in decent shape, but disorganized, and Brielle dove into them with enthusiasm. This was something she could do, something she was actually good at. She discovered that Quincy was doing better than he let on. The ranch was profitable, selling horses to the army at Fort Yuma and to ranches throughout the territory. He bred working horses, tough animals that could handle the desert climate and the hard labor of ranch work. His reputation for quality was spreading, and orders were coming in faster than he could fill them. "You're practically wealthy," Brielle told him one evening as they went over the books together. She had been at the ranch for 2 weeks, and these evening sessions had become routine. "Why do you live so modestly?" Quincy shrugged. "Don't need much. Most of the profit goes back into the ranch, into buying better breeding stock and paying the men fair wages. What's left I save." "For what?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the desk. "For opportunities, I guess. For moments when I can make a difference. Like buying the contract of a woman who deserved better than she was getting." Brielle felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You're saying I was an investment." "I'm saying you were a person in need, and I had the means to help. The fact that you're also brilliant at organizing my disaster of a bookkeeping system is a bonus." He smiled at her, that smile that made her heart do strange things in her chest. They were sitting close, hunched over the ledger together in the lamplight. Brielle was acutely aware of his presence, the warmth of him, the scent of leather and sage and something indefinably masculine. She found herself noticing little things. The way his hair curled slightly at his collar, the small scar on his chin, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. "You stare," Quincy said softly, not looking up from the ledger. Brielle jerked back, mortified. "I apologize. I did not mean to be rude." "I didn't say I minded." Now he did look up, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "I stare at you too when you're not looking." The air between them seemed to thicken. Brielle's heart hammered in her chest. She should say something, do something, but she was frozen, caught in his gaze like a rabbit before a wolf. Except she did not feel like prey. She felt like something precious, something treasured. Quincy reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered for just a moment against her cheek. "You're beautiful, Miss Voss. I hope you know that." "Brielle," she whispered. "Please call me Brielle." "Brielle," he repeated, and her name in his deep voice sounded like a prayer. "Beautiful Brielle." The moment stretched between them, fragile and full of possibility. Then Quincy drew back, clearing his throat. "It's late. You should get some rest." Brielle nodded, not trusting her voice. She stood, smoothing her skirts, and headed for the stairs. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. Quincy was watching her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for saving me." "You saved yourself," Quincy replied. "You survived everything they threw at you. You're stronger than you know." Brielle climbed the stairs to her room, her mind whirling. She was falling for him. It was foolish, dangerous even. She was bound to him by contract for 7 years. He held all the power in their relationship, no matter how kindly he exercised it. Letting herself care for him was asking for heartbreak. But her heart did not seem to care about logic. It wanted what it wanted, and it wanted Quincy Garrett with an intensity that terrified her. Summer deepened into its most brutal heat. The ranch work continued despite the temperatures, and Brielle found herself expanding her role beyond just bookkeeping. She helped Alina in the enormous garden, learning which plants thrived in the desert and which needed constant coaxing. She spent time in the corrals, watching the horses and learning their personalities from River, who had an almost mystical way with the animals. "You have the gift," River told her one afternoon as a particularly skittish mare ate apple slices from her palm. "The horses trust you." "I just stand still and let them come to me," Brielle said. "That is the gift, patience, understanding. Many people never learn it," River smiled. "Quincy has it too. That is why his horses are the best, Quincy." Everything came back to Quincy. She saw him every day, worked alongside him every evening, shared meals with him and the ranch hands. She learned that he was unfailingly fair, quick to laugh, and absolutely devoted to the ranch and the people who worked for it. The men respected him, but more than that, they genuinely liked him. He worked as hard as any of them, never asking anyone to do something he would not do himself. She also learned that he was lonely. She saw it in the quiet moments, in the way his eyes grew distant when the men talked about their families, in the careful way he maintained distance from her, even as the attraction between them grew more obvious by the day. It came to a head on a Friday evening in late July. The heat had been oppressive all week, and tempers were short. An issue came up with a payment from Fort Yuma, a discrepancy that could cost the ranch several $100s. Brielle had been working on the problem all day, going through records and correspondence, and she finally found the error. A decimal point in the wrong place on the Army's payment voucher. She burst into the barn where Quincy was working on tack, waving the papers triumphantly. "I found it. It was their mistake, not ours. We can get the full payment." Quincy looked up from the saddle he was oiling, his face breaking into a grin. "You're sure?" "Completely sure. Look, here's our invoice, here's their voucher, see the difference." She laid the papers out on a workbench, pointing out the error. Quincy studied them, then let out a whoop of joy. "Brielle, you're a genius. That money makes the difference between a comfortable fall and a tight one." Before she could react, he grabbed her around the waist and spun her in a circle, laughing. Brielle shrieked in surprise, clutching his shoulders for balance. When he set her down, they were standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. The laughter faded. Quincy's hands were still on her waist. Brielle's hands were still on his shoulders. Neither of them moved. "Brielle," Quincy said, his voice rough, "I should not hold you like this." "Why not?" The words came out breathless. "Because you're contracted to me, because I have all the power here and it would not be right to take advantage. What if I want you to hold me?" Brielle asked, bolder than she had ever been in her life. "What if I have been hoping you would?" Quincy's jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're saying." "I am 19 years old, not a child. I know my own mind. And I know that I think about you constantly, that I look forward to our evenings together more than anything else, that when you smile at me, I feel like I can do anything." She took a breath. "I know that I am falling in love with you, Quincy Garrett." She saw the impact of her words in his eyes, saw the war between desire and honor playing out across his face. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stepped back, releasing her. "You don't mean that. You're grateful to me for getting you out of a bad situation. That's not love." "Do not tell me what I feel," Brielle said, anger flaring now. "I know the difference between gratitude and love. I am grateful to Alina for teaching me to garden. I am grateful to Sam for showing me how to fix a fence. I do not lie awake at night thinking about them. I do not feel my heart race when they walk into a room. That is only you, only ever you." Quincy turned away, his shoulders tight. "Even if what you feel is real, it cannot happen. Not while you're contracted to me. I will not be that man, Brielle. I will not be the man who uses his power over you." "Then release me from the contract." He spun back around. "What? Release me? Tear it up like you did that letter. Set me free. Then we will be equals and you cannot claim power over me." "If I release you, you'll have nothing," Quincy said. "No money, no place to stay, no way to support yourself." "I will have my skills. I can find work as a bookkeeper or a teacher. I will manage. In Yuma. Brielle, you know how that town treats women alone. I cannot let you go back to that." "Then what do you suggest?" Brielle demanded. "That we ignore this for 7 years. That we pretend there is nothing between us." "I cannot do that, Quincy. I am not strong enough." Quincy ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I am trying to do the right thing. The right thing is not always the same as the good thing, Brielle said softly. Sometimes the right thing is to trust people to know their own hearts. Sometimes the right thing is to take a risk on something that matters. They stared at each other across the barn, the air heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Quincy spoke. Give me time. Let me think about this. You deserve better than a rushed decision made in a moment of passion. It was not what Brielle wanted to hear, but she could see the turmoil in his eyes and knew pushing harder would not help. She nodded stiffly and turned to leave. Brielle, Quincy called after her. She paused in the doorway. For what it is worth, I think about you constantly too. She looked back at him, her heart aching with longing and frustration. Then she left, walking quickly across the yard to the house before he could see the tears beginning to fall. The next few days were awkward. Quincy threw himself into ranch work, coming in late for supper and disappearing immediately after. Brielle buried herself in the books, organizing files that did not need organizing just to have something to do. Alina noticed, of course. Alina noticed everything. You and Quincy, you had a fight. She asked as they worked in the garden one morning. Something like that, Brielle admitted. Alina made a sympathetic noise. He is a good man but stubborn, like a mule. His heart wants one thing, his head says another. His heart wants me, Brielle asked, hungry for confirmation. Any fool can see it. The way he looks at you like you are water in the desert, but he worries about doing the right thing. He saw his mother suffer under a man who had power over her. He will not risk treating you the same way, even if the situations are completely different. So what do I do? Alina smiled. You be patient. You show him that you are sure, and you trust that love will find a way. It always does. That Saturday, a rider came from Fort Yuma with a message. There was trouble with a group of bandits who had been stealing horses from ranches throughout the territory. The army was organizing a meeting of all the local ranchers to coordinate a response, and Quincy's presence was requested. I will be gone for 2 days, maybe 3, Quincy told the assembled household. Sam, you're in charge while I am away. Keep everyone safe. His eyes lingered on Brielle when he said that last part. She wanted to go to him, to wish him well properly, but the distance was still between them. He left at dawn the next morning. Brielle watched from her window as he rode out, sitting tall in the saddle, and felt fear clutch at her heart. The desert was dangerous. Bandits were dangerous. What if something happened to him? What if she never got the chance to tell him again how she felt? The first day passed slowly. Brielle tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to Quincy. Where was he? Was he safe? The second day was worse. By the third day, she was standing on the porch every hour, scanning the horizon for any sign of a rider. Evening was falling when she finally saw him. A single horse, moving fast, heading straight for the ranch. She knew it was him before she could make out any details. Her heart knew. He rode into the yard and dismounted in one fluid motion, tossing the reins to Thomas. His eyes found her immediately, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He strode toward the porch with purpose, taking the steps 2 at a time. Brielle, he said. Just her name, but it contained everything. You're back, she breathed. Are you all right? What happened with the bandits? The army has a plan. It is handled, but I do not want to talk about bandits. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough to touch. I thought about what you said. I thought about it the entire time I was gone, and you were right. Right about what? About taking risks on things that matter, about trusting people to know their own hearts. He reached out and took her hands in his grip warm and strong. I love you, Brielle. I have loved you since I watched you stand on that platform with your head high, refusing to let them break you. I burned that letter because it made me angry that anyone could be so blind as to not see your worth. I called you treasure because that is what you are to me, precious beyond measure." Brielle felt tears streaming down her face, but these were good tears, happy tears. "I love you too. I told you that. I know. And I was a fool to push you away. I was so worried about not abusing my power that I failed to see I was hurting us both." He released one of her hands to cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I cannot release your contract, not legally, not without sending you into danger, but I can marry you. As my wife, you would have legal protections. You would be my equal in every way that matters. The contract becomes void upon marriage." Brielle's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am asking you to marry me," Quincy confirmed. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks. But I am 32 years old, and I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I do not want to waste time. I do not want to spend another day keeping my distance. I want to hold you, kiss you, build a life with you, if you will have me." "Yes," Brielle said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Quincy's answering smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe, and she did not care. This was where she belonged. This was home. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, pulling back just enough to see her face. "I have been dreaming of kissing you." "Please," Brielle whispered. He kissed her gently at first, almost reverently, as if she were something fragile and precious. But when she made a small sound of need and pressed closer, the kiss deepened, became something passionate and claiming. Brielle had never been kissed before, but her body seemed to know what to do, her arms winding around his neck, her fingers tangling in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quincy rested his forehead against hers. "We will do this right. I will speak to the minister tomorrow. We can be married by the end of the week if you want, or we can wait, have a proper courtship, whatever you prefer." "End of the week," Brielle said firmly. "I do not need a courtship, I need you," he laughed, the sound full of joy. "End of the week it is." A cheer went up from near the barn. They turned to see all 5 ranch hands watching them, grinning like fools. Sam was actually wiping his eyes. "About damn time, boss," Daniel called out. "Language," Quincy replied, but he was smiling. "And you all knew." "Everyone knew," Sam said. "You two were about as subtle as a buffalo stampede. We have been taking bets on how long it would take you to figure it out." "Who won?" Brielle asked, laughing. "Alina," Rivers said. "She bet you would be engaged within 2 months. She is very wise." Alina herself appeared from the house, wiping her hands on her apron and smiling knowingly. "Of course I won. I know love when I see it. Now we have a wedding to plan." So much to do, so little time. The next days were a whirlwind. Alina took charge of the preparations with the efficiency of a general commanding an army. She conscripted her daughters to help sew a proper wedding dress for Brielle, produced a lace veil from some mysterious source, and somehow arranged for flowers, despite the desert location. Quincy rode into Yuma to speak with Reverend Hall and to place an order at the general store for food and supplies for a celebration. He came back with news that sent a thrill through the household. "The Reverend says he can perform the ceremony this Saturday," Quincy announced. "And word has spread. Half the town wants to come." "Even after they laughed at me on the auction block?" Brielle asked bitterly. "Especially after that. They saw a woman treated poorly, and now they will see that same woman cherished by a good man. It is a story they want to be part of." Quincy took her hand. "But if you do not want them there, we can have a private ceremony, just us and the ranch hands." Brielle considered. Part of her wanted to hide away, to keep this precious thing private. But another part of her, the part that had held her head high on that platform, wanted those people to see, wanted them to know they had been wrong about her. "Let them come," she said. "Let everyone see." Saturday dawned clear and hot, the sky an endless blue dome over the desert. Alina and her daughters descended on the ranch at dawn, taking over the house and shooing the men outside. They transformed the porch with flowers and bunting, set up tables for food in the shade, and turned Brielle's bedroom into a dressing room fit for royalty. The dress was simple but beautiful, white cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Alina had somehow managed to match Brielle's size perfectly. The veil was old lace, passed down through Alina's family, and it made Brielle feel like a bride from a storybook. "You are beautiful," Alina said, standing back to admire her handiwork. "Quincy will forget how to breathe when he sees you." People began arriving around noon. Neighboring ranchers and their families, townspeople from Yuma, even some of the soldiers from Fort Yuma who had done business with Quincy. They came with food and gifts, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. Brielle watched from her window, her stomach tight with nerves. This was really happening. In less than an hour she would be Quincy's wife. The woman who had been sold as worthless would become the wife of one of the most respected men in the territory. A knock at the door made her turn. "Come in." Quincy entered, then stopped dead, his eyes going wide. "Brielle," he breathed, "you are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "You are not supposed to see me before the wedding," she protested, but she was smiling. "I do not care about superstitions. I needed to see you to make sure you are all right. I know this is happening fast." She crossed to him, taking his hands. He was dressed in his best clothes, black trousers and a white shirt with a string tie, his hair neatly combed, and he was so handsome it made her ache. "I am more than all right. I am happy. Happier than I have ever been. No doubts, no second thoughts." "None, you, not a single one. I cannot wait to make you my wife." He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this." "I know," Brielle said simply. "That is why I am marrying you." He left reluctantly, and Alina bustled back in to make final adjustments. Finally, the moment arrived. Sam appeared at her door, looking uncomfortable in a suit. "Quincy asked if I would walk you down," he said gruffly, "if that is all right with you. He thought since your father could not be here, maybe I could stand in." Brielle felt tears threaten but blinked them back. "I would be honored." She took Sam's arm and they descended the stairs together. The ceremony was being held on the wide porch, and as they stepped outside, Brielle saw that every available space was filled with people. They turned to look at her, and she heard the murmurs of surprise and approval, but she only had eyes for Quincy. He stood at the far end of the porch, the reverend beside him, and when he saw her, his whole face lit up with such love and joy that she felt it like a physical thing, warm and golden in her chest. Sam walked her forward and placed her hand in Quincy's. "You take care of her," he said quietly. "She is special." "I know," Quincy replied, his eyes never leaving Brielle's face. "I will protect her with my life." The ceremony itself was a blur. Brielle heard the reverend's words as if from a distance, focused entirely on Quincy, on the feel of his hand holding hers, on the love shining in his eyes. She repeated her vows clearly, her voice strong. "I, Brielle Voss, take you, Quincy Garrett, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part." Quincy's vows were equally firm. "I, Quincy Garrett, take you, Brielle Voss, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part." I promise to treasure you every day of my life. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Quincy, you may kiss your bride." Quincy did not need to be told twice. He pulled Brielle into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, to the cheers and applause of the crowd. When they broke apart, both smiling, the Reverend announced them as Mr. and Mrs. Quincy Garrett. The celebration that followed was joyous and loud. People ate and drank, told stories, and offered toasts to the new couple. Brielle found herself passed from person to person, receiving congratulations and well wishes. Several women from town approached her hesitantly, apologizing for their earlier silence when she had been on the auction block. "We should have said something," one woman told her. "We should have stopped what was happening. We are sorry." Brielle was gracious in her acceptance of their apologies, but privately she thought it was interesting how willing people were to be kind once someone else had taken the first step. Quincy had shown them it was possible to see her differently, and now they were falling over themselves to do so. But that bitterness faded quickly in the face of so much genuine happiness. These people were celebrating her marriage, celebrating her. For the first time in her life, she felt truly accepted. As evening fell, the party began to break up. People headed home, calling out final congratulations. Elena and her daughters cleaned up with remarkable efficiency, then they too departed with hugs and promises to return soon. Finally, Brielle and Quincy were alone. They stood on the porch, watching the last wagon disappear into the distance, his arm around her waist. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Garrett?" Quincy asked softly. "Like I am dreaming and terrified I will wake up," Brielle admitted. "You are not dreaming. This is real. You are my wife and I am your husband, and nothing will change that." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I want you to know something. Tonight, tomorrow, next week, whenever you are ready, I will wait. There is no rush. We have the rest of our lives." Brielle felt a wave of love so strong it almost knocked her over. Even now, even in this, he was putting her first, making sure she felt safe and cherished. "I am ready now," she said. "I want to be your wife in every way." Quincy's eyes darkened with desire, but his voice remained gentle. "Are you sure?" "I am sure of you. That is all I need." He swept her into his arms, carrying her across the threshold into their home. Brielle laughed, clinging to his neck as he navigated the stairs to the second floor. He carried her to his room, their room now, and set her gently on her feet beside the bed. What followed was tender and sweet. Two people learning each other, giving and receiving pleasure and comfort. Quincy was endlessly patient, making sure Brielle felt cherished every moment. And when they finally came together, skin to skin, heart to heart, Brielle felt like she had finally found the place where she belonged. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Brielle's head on Quincy's chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. "I love you," he murmured. "My treasure, my wife, my Brielle." "I love you," she replied. "My hero, my husband, my Quincy." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two souls that had found their home. The months that followed were the happiest of Brielle's life. She threw herself into her role as Quincy's wife and partner, managing the ranch's business affairs with increasing confidence. The books had never been in better shape, and she implemented new systems for tracking inventory and expenses that made everything run more smoothly. But more than that, she found joy in the simple domesticity of married life. She and Elena worked together in the kitchen, and to everyone's surprise, including her own, Brielle discovered she could cook when someone patient was teaching her. She would never be a gourmet chef, but she could produce solid, filling meals that the ranch hands appreciated. She also found unexpected talent in other areas. River taught her to ride properly, and she discovered she had a natural seat and good hands. Soon, she was helping with the horses, particularly the young ones who needed gentle handling. Her patience and quiet confidence worked wonders with nervous fillies and skittish colts. Quincy watched her bloom with obvious pride. He had always believed in her, but seeing her believe in herself was something even better. Their marriage deepened as they learned each other's rhythms and quirks. Quincy, she discovered, was surprisingly romantic, bringing her wildflowers he found on rides and leaving little notes tucked into her books. Brielle learned to read his moods, knowing when he needed to talk and when he just needed her presence. They also learned to argue. Their first real fight came in October, over a disagreement about expanding the horse breeding operation. Quincy wanted to move slowly, while Brielle had run the numbers and believed they could afford to be more aggressive. The argument grew heated, voices were raised, and Brielle stormed out to the barn. She was brushing down one of the mares, angry tears streaming down her face when Quincy found her. "I am sorry," he said quietly from the doorway. "I was not listening to you. I was so caught up in being cautious that I dismissed your analysis." "I am sorry too," Brielle said. "I should not have yelled, but you made me feel like you do not trust my judgment." "I trust you completely. That is not the issue. The issue is that I still see that scared girl on the auction block sometimes, and I want to protect her. But you are not that girl anymore. You are a strong, capable woman, and I need to treat you like the partner you are." "I am still scared sometimes," Brielle admitted. "I still have nightmares about the shackles, about being powerless. But then I wake up and you are beside me, and I remember I am safe." They came together then, holding each other, working through the lingering hurt. And when they went back to the house, they looked at her numbers together and decided she was right. They could afford to expand. The expansion was successful, just as Brielle had predicted. By spring of 1877, the Broken Star Ranch was one of the premier horse suppliers in the territory. They hired 3 more hands to help with the increased workload, and Quincy began to talk about building a larger barn. In April, Brielle realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was just stress from the busy season, but when a second month passed, she knew. She was pregnant. She told Quincy one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained since their wedding day. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand. "I am going to have a baby." Quincy went very still. Then he turned to her, his eyes wide with wonder. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. Elena suspects, too. She has been watching me like a hawk." "A baby," Quincy breathed. "We are going to have a baby." Then he was on his feet, whooping with joy, spinning her around just like he had that day in the barn. When he set her down, he was laughing and crying at the same time. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. We are going to have a family. Are you happy?" Brielle asked, even though the answer was obvious. "Happy does not begin to cover it. I am ecstatic. I am terrified. I am so in love with you I can hardly stand it." He knelt down and pressed a gentle kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and I already love you more than anything." Brielle ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full she thought it might burst. A year ago, she had been in shackles, declared worthless, with no hope for the future. Now she was loved, treasured, and carrying the child of the best man she had ever known. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Brielle continued working as long as she could, though Quincy fussed over her constantly, worried she was doing too much. Elena moved into the ranch for the last month, insisting that Brielle needed a woman's care. In December, on a cool desert night with stars blazing overhead, Brielle went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Quincy, pacing outside the bedroom door, thought he might lose his mind with worry. But finally, as dawn broke over the ranch, a baby's cry split the air. Elena opened the door, beaming. "You have a son, a big, healthy boy." Quincy practically flew into the room. Brielle lay in the bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, her face glowing with love. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Quincy approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. He looked down at the tiny face, at the wisps of dark hair and the miniature fingers curled into fists, and felt his heart break open in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift." "What should we name him?" Brielle asked. They had discussed names for months but had not settled on anything definitive. Now, looking at his son, Quincy knew exactly what felt right. "Samuel, after Sam. He has been like a father to me since I bought the ranch. And for a middle name, James, after your father." "Samuel James Garrett," Brielle said, testing it out. "It is perfect." Little Samuel proved to be a content baby, sleeping well and rarely fussing. Quincy was completely besotted, spending every free moment with his son. The ranch hands teased him mercilessly about it, but he did not care. He had never known he could love like this, completely and without reservation. Brielle marveled at the kind of father Quincy was. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Samuel when he was fussy, and sang lullabies in his deep, rumbling voice that sent the baby right to sleep. He was patient and gentle and absolutely devoted. "You are a natural," she told him one night as she watched him rock Samuel. "I am just trying to be the father I wished I had," Quincy said. "Trying to give him what I did not get. You are giving him so much more than that. You are giving him a home full of love." As Samuel grew, the ranch grew with him. The horse breeding operation continued to thrive, and Quincy's reputation spread throughout the Southwest. But he never let success go to his head. He remained the same fair, hard-working man Brielle had fallen in love with, just with a baby strapped to his back more often than not. Samuel's first word was horse, which delighted everyone. His first steps were taken in the barn, toddling toward River with his arms outstretched. He was a happy child, surrounded by adults who adored him and plenty of space to explore. When Samuel was 2, Brielle discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the fall of 1880 they welcomed a daughter. Quincy held her with the same wonder he had shown Samuel, tears streaming down his face. "She has your eyes," he told Brielle. "She is going to be as beautiful as her mother." They named her Catherine Elena Garrett after no one in particular, but because the name felt right. Catherine, who quickly became known as Katie, was a feisty baby with a loud voice and strong opinions. She kept everyone on their toes and had her father wrapped around her tiny finger from day one. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1882, they were one of the largest operations in southern Arizona, employing over 20 hands. They built the new barn Quincy had dreamed of, along with several new outbuildings. The house itself was expanded, with more bedrooms added for the growing family and a proper office for Brielle. But success did not change the fundamental nature of their life. They still worked hard, still shared meals with the ranch hands, still found time every evening to sit on the porch and watch the sunset together. The rituals that had sustained them in the early days remained. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who wanted to know everything about everything. He followed River around constantly, learning about the horses and the desert. Katie was more interested in Elena's garden, spending hours watching things grow and asking endless questions about plants. One evening in the spring of 1883, as they sat on the porch watching Samuel and Katie chase fireflies in the yard, Quincy turned to Brielle. "You remember the day we met?" he asked. "Every detail," Brielle replied. "The sun, the shackles, that horrible letter. I knew the moment I saw you that you were going to change my life. I did not know how, but I knew. I thought you were crazy, paying so much for someone declared worthless." Quincy took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring. "You were never worthless. You were treasure waiting to be discovered. You still are. Every day with you is a gift." "You saved me," Brielle said softly. "No," Quincy corrected. "I just gave you a chance. You saved yourself. You became who you were always meant to be." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, the ranch settling down for the night around them. Brielle thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that awful day in Yuma to this perfect evening. She thought about how close she had come to losing everything, and how one man's kindness had changed the trajectory of her entire life. "I love you," she said. "I do not say it enough, but I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Quincy replied. "You are my treasure, now and always." The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges but always underpinned by the steady foundation of their love. Samuel grew into a teenager, tall like his father with his mother's quick mind. He had a natural talent with horses and an even better head for business. Katie was 12, all energy and passion, with a gift for growing things that had her planning to study agriculture when she was older. In 1888, Brielle and Quincy celebrated their 11th wedding anniversary with a party that rivaled their original wedding celebration. The ranch was packed with friends and family, and as they danced together under the stars, Quincy pulled her close. 11 years, he murmured. "Feels like both forever and no time at all." "I would do it all again," Brielle said. "Every moment, every challenge, every joy, it all led here to this life with you." "I burned that letter," Quincy said, "but I wish I had kept it, just so I could show it to anyone who doubted you. So I could say, look at this woman they called worthless. Look at what she built. Look at how wrong they were." "I do not need them to see it," Brielle replied. "I only need you to see it. You have always seen me clearly. I see my wife, my partner, my best friend. I see the mother of my children and the keeper of my heart. I see treasure, Brielle. Always and forever I see treasure." They kissed then, surrounded by people who loved them, under a sky full of stars in the desert they had made their home. And Brielle thought about how strange and wonderful life was, how the worst moments could lead to the best ones, how being called worthless had led her to the person who would call her treasure. Years later, when Samuel was 22 and preparing to take over more of the ranch operations, he asked his parents about how they met. They were all sitting in the expanded living room, now filled with comfortable furniture and pictures chronicling their life together. Katie was there too, home from her agricultural studies in California, and several grandchildren played on the floor. Brielle and Quincy exchanged glances. Then Quincy began the story. He told them about the auction, about the letter, about burning it and calling their mother treasure. He told them about the early days of the ranch, about falling in love, about building a life together. "But why did you do it?" Samuel asked. "Why did you buy a contract for someone everyone said was worthless?" Quincy looked at Brielle, his eyes soft with love. "Because I saw past what everyone else was saying. I saw a woman who had been beaten down by circumstances but refused to break. I saw strength and dignity and potential, and I thought if I could just give her a chance, she would show the world what she was really capable of." "And did she?" Katie asked, grinning. "She exceeded every expectation I had," Quincy said. "She became the best business partner I could have asked for, the best wife I could have dreamed of, and the best mother our children could have had. She turned this ranch into something beyond my wildest dreams." "We did it together," Brielle corrected. "I could not have done any of it without you believing in me first." "So the moral of the story is that you should trust people even when everyone else says not to?" Samuel asked. "The moral," Quincy said, "is that worth is not determined by circumstance or by what other people say. Worth is inherent. Your mother was always valuable, always worthy. She just needed someone to give her the opportunity to show it. And you need to trust your instincts," Brielle added. "Your father's instinct told him I was worth saving, and he acted on it. That courage changed both our lives." The grandchildren demanded to hear more stories, and the evening passed in warmth and laughter. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Brielle and Quincy took their customary evening walk to the porch. It was a tradition they had maintained for over 20 years now, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "We did all right, didn't we?" Quincy asked, pulling her close against the cool night air. "We did better than all right. We built something beautiful, a family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us." "I still think about that day sometimes," Quincy admitted, "about how close we came to never meeting. If I had gone to the auction an hour later, if someone else had bid, if I had not had the courage to act on what I felt. But you did. You saw me when everyone else looked away. You valued me when everyone else declared me worthless. You loved me when I did not know how to love myself." Brielle turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me everything, Quincy. A home, a family, a purpose, a life worth living." "You gave me everything too," Quincy said. "You gave me love, children, a partnership that makes every day better. You turned this ranch into a home." "You are still my treasure, Brielle. After all these years, you are still the most precious thing in my life." They stood there together, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life from the ashes of tragedy and hardship. The stars wheeled overhead, the desert breathed around them, and in the distance, horses whinnied softly in the barn. "Come to bed," Brielle said finally. "We have a big day tomorrow. The new foals are being weaned, and Samuel wants to discuss expanding the breeding program further." "Always thinking ahead," Quincy teased gently. "All right, let's go." They walked inside together, hand in hand as always. And if Quincy paused to look back at the ranch one more time, at everything they had built together, at the evidence of their love spread out under the starlight, well, that was understandable. It was a view worth savoring. In the summer of 1895, Quincy and Brielle celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch as the sun set. They were older now. Quincy's hair shot through with silver and Brielle's showing threads of gray, but their love had not diminished with time. If anything, it had deepened, matured like fine wine. 18 years, Brielle mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other times I can barely remember life before you. "I cannot remember life before you," Quincy said. "Or I can, but it was not really living. It was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me what it means to truly live." "We taught each other," Brielle corrected. "You showed me my worth. I showed you how to accept love. We grew together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The ranch was quieter now, with Samuel running most of the day-to-day operations, but it was still theirs, still the home they had built together. "You ever regret it?" Quincy asked suddenly. "Marrying me so quickly, tying your life to mine?" Brielle looked at him in surprise. "Never, not for a single moment. Why would you ask that?" "I just want to make sure. I want to know that you are happy, that this life is what you wanted." "Quincy Garrett, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. This life, our children, this ranch, it is more than I ever dreamed possible when I was standing on that auction block. You did not just save me. You gave me a reason to live, a reason to believe in goodness and love and hope. I have never regretted you, I never will. Quincy pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Good, because I plan on loving you for at least another 40 years. Only 40, Brielle teased. Fine, 50, 60. However long we get, I will spend every moment loving you. The seasons continued to turn, bringing both joys and sorrows. In 1897, they lost Sam, who passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. The entire territory mourned him, but none more than Quincy, who had loved the older man like a father. It was Brielle who held him through his grief, who reminded him that Sam had lived a full life and died happy, surrounded by people who loved him. Elena followed a year later, her body finally giving out after years of tireless work. Brielle wept for the woman who had been like a mother to her, who had taught her so much. They buried her in the ranch cemetery they had established next to Sam and planted her favorite flowers over the grave. But there were joys, too. Samuel married a wonderful woman named Margaret, and they gave Quincy and Brielle 3 grandchildren. Katie married a fellow agriculture student and moved to California, though she visited often with her own growing family. The ranch continued to thrive, adapting to the changing times as the wild frontier gave way to a more settled territory. In 1900, as a new century dawned, Quincy and Brielle stood once again on their porch, looking out over the land they loved. We made it to a new century, Brielle said wonderingly. When I was 19, standing in those shackles, I did not think I would survive another year. Now here I am, 43 years old, with a husband I adore and a life beyond my wildest dreams. We are not done yet, Quincy said. He was 54 now, his body showing the wear of decades of hard work, but his eyes were still the same storm gray that had captured her heart, still filled with love when he looked at her. We have plenty of years left, plenty of memories still to make. Tell me about them, Brielle said, snuggling against him. Tell me about our future. Well, Samuel and Margaret are talking about another baby. That will be grandchild number 6. Katie wants us to visit California next spring, meet her new neighbors who are doing innovative things with irrigation. We could make a trip of it, see the ocean. I have never seen the ocean, Brielle said. Then we will see it together. And when we come back, we will sit right here on this porch, and I will tell you again how much I love you, and you will probably roll your eyes at me. I never roll my eyes at you. You absolutely do, but I do not mind. I know you love me even when you are exasperated with me. Brielle laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet ranch. I do love you, so very much. They stood there together as the sun set, as they had done thousands of times before and would do thousands of times more. 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of meaning and purpose and love. 2 people who proved that worth was not determined by others' opinions, but by the courage to believe in yourself and the willingness to see the value in others. Quincy had burned a letter calling Brielle worthless and called her his treasure. And every day since, through actions large and small, he had proven those words true. He had treasured her, cherished her, loved her with a devotion that never wavered. And Brielle had bloomed under that love, becoming the person she was always meant to be. Strong, capable, confident, and loved. So deeply, thoroughly loved. The desert wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of sage and horses and home. In the distance, a coyote howled, welcoming the night. And on the porch of the Broken Star Ranch, 2 hearts beat in perfect synchronization, bound together by a love that would last until their final breath and beyond. Come inside, Quincy said finally. It is getting cold. In a minute, Brielle replied. I just want to stand here a little longer counting my blessings. And what blessings are those, this land, our family, our life together. You, most of all, you are my greatest blessing, Quincy Garrett. And you are mine, Brielle Garrett, my treasure now and always. They went inside together, closing the door on another perfect day, another chapter in their ongoing love story. And if that door opened on countless tomorrows filled with laughter and love, with challenges met and joys celebrated, with a family that carried on their legacy of valuing people for their inherent worth rather than others' opinions, well, that was exactly as it should be. The story of the woman sold with a letter calling her worthless, and the cowboy who burned it and called her treasure was not just a moment. It was a lifetime. It was a legacy. It was proof that love, real love, saw value where others saw nothing, created beauty from ashes, and endured through every trial. And it was proof that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply believing in someone when the whole world says not to. That one moment of faith can change everything, can save a life, can create a love that echoes through generations. Quincy and Brielle Garrett lived that truth every day. And when their time finally came, decades later, they went together, peacefully, in the home they had built, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. The Broken Star Ranch still stands today, run by descendants who know the story of how it all began. They know about the auction, the letter, the burning, the declaration of treasure. They tell that story to each new generation, keeping alive the memory of two people who proved that worth is inherent, that love conquers all, and that one act of kindness can change the world. And on quiet evenings, when the sun sets over the Arizona desert, sometimes the wind carries echoes of laughter from that porch, whispers of a love that refused to die even when death claimed the lovers. The Broken Star Ranch is built on love, on faith, on the unshakable belief that every person has value if you just give them the chance to show it. That is the legacy of Quincy and Brielle Garrett. That is the story that began with shackles and a letter declaring worthlessness, and ended with freedom and a love that proved priceless. That is the story of treasure found, cherished, and held sacred for all time.